So throughout like my activations and stuff, and as a result from the psychological things that have occurred to me, because of course, if you pay attention to any of the things that I talk about, you will know that I had a Carl Jung Red Book level experience starting about 2 years ago. Yes, and long story short, some of the things that I do based off of those things that I had to observe and how I use that information for myself as I'm now in a more normalized state, if you will, after the fact. So, for example, one of the big things that came up was the Chakmul level sacrifice scenario, if you will. And the concept was surrounding the needed change, at least from my perspective, involved with both the spirit, the blue hummingbird spirit, particularly was in charge of that, and I channeled that spirit actually. And essentially it was in reference to a change in time, whether it was time in the past or time that could have become the future, of sacrificing people. So the way that I ended up thinking about this later in a separate reference was in the fact that the need to sacrifice people was based off of a belief from the Aztec people, that the sun, the literal sun, needed blood from people, blood and hearts, in order to move across the sky. Today, we may or may not believe those things in general, and by we, I mean humans, because I personally, I am a Seminole, and with a bunch of other things mixed in there. And so, long story short, by the way, I'm making cookies. Long story short, my people, at least out loud and at least as uncovered, were not doing the same practices as the Aztec. So aside from that, we have similar genetic bases though, and we definitely had some admixture, as my people are from the Florida side of the Gulf of Mexico instead of from the Mexican side of the Gulf of Mexico. So long story short, the thing that ended up coming to me was in reference to it being a symbolic, like, to make this culture be seen without giving an overt amount of permission for random people, especially people who were not knowledgeable or not aware of circumstances that were happening around them, to make sure that they weren't just sacrificed with like basically entrapped and murdered by their heart being pulled out of their body, and then given to the sun. And the alternative that became available, or that I eventually thought of, was to prepare a beetroot. Prepare a beetroot and do the same type of symptom as the beetroot. As for me, this was just a personal revelation, and separate from the ways that it was addressed through the psychological point of reference, because again, the people, I believe, should be empowered to speak on their solutions, but they should also know of the negative effects of the things that they participate in, especially in reference to our modern world. Thankfully, throughout that time and throughout different times after that, I was able to find, because of course, seeing this in person or being a part of that frequency in terms of understanding was a little bit jarring. So, like, it was my prerogative to find references that were both capable and fully aware of their culture, so that there could be either questions asked or pulses started in reference to making changes where they needed to be changed through the right lens. So that's just an example of how deep and in psychology, in human psychology, especially in reference to egregores and spatial relevance, i.e., I'm from Atlanta, so I did not have I had I had Mexican friends, but I did not have a lot of Mexican culture around me in Atlanta. Like they have taco stands everywhere out here in Los Angeles. It was actually considered more rare in Atlanta to see like a Mexican restaurant or a taco stand. Like it's not something that is like a heavy cultural influence. So all of that was new, and it was potentially mind altering in terms of how I observed people and how I understood people. The good news is that I also had the benefit of being in contact with other aware and awake people who were both inside of that culture and a part of Christian cultures and stuff. The biggest part being people being able to reference what parts of their culture was coming up the most from the ground, and being in front of any waves, particularly the ones that would end badly for them. And also being reminded, even though I did occasionally meet people that would really piss me off, to see people who were of the opposite frequency, or to see a young man who was holding a very bright light from within himself, or any of those other references. Yeah, it was quite interesting. And just to remind you, or just to say, I also did not have a lot of deep study of the Popoluj or any of in-depth knowledge of what's inside of Mayan and Aztec understanding. Eventually, a year or so later, I had the benefit of understanding that some of those things were references, like literally experiencing the creation of the different suns and the different pieces with and through the different suns. So potentially observing the information made in the stories as they are told to reference the things that they're referring to. And thankfully, because I had an underpinning of Greek mythology as well as Hinduism as well as Buddhism, I was able to find some type of pattern throughout and within that entire experience. Not to mention that the Mayan and Aztec experiences was only one of quite a few experiences that were shown in the same way at the same time during that time. So yeah, now I'm happy to be where I'm at the moment, in my mind and in my happiness. But also, it seems like some of those issues that the abusive people came about to are those things that are going to really be coming out of the ground now. So if people have taken their time to address and take care of their cultural hygiene, then people should be fine. In reference to, other than that, us continuing to make ourselves known and continuing to make our needs known and continuing to put people and their cultures, relative cultures, into perspective, particularly the American one, because people, I have a feeling, do not understand American culture. The reason I feel this way is actually because of one of my associates from Nigeria. And there was one thing where I realized that he had never seen like a $20 bill before and never held a $20 bill before. And his perspective of what Americans do and how Americans live may be different because, of course, it comes from his own perspective. And it's the same thing with, with other cultures and how they come to America and what America means and the things that Americans have and how Americans acquire what they have. All of those things matter. So that's where I'm at in terms of my social and civil work right now, is making sure that, people can understand both parts of American culture, which is Indigenous American culture as well as United States of America. The reason why is because I'm not registered on a reservation. I'm registered as a United States citizen. Probably for my life, but we'll see. We'll see how things like pan out over the next few years, like 6 years or so. We'll see. But I haven't lost faith in America yet. I think that it's the prerogative of the leader of the United States of America to make sure that the inhabitants of America are happy, as well as to secure their assets and make sure that everything continues flowing in a way that is sustainable to what people need. And also, as from me and what I do, I make sure that people have information about how things work, whether it be things that they may not have access to understanding, or whether that be just pure educational things, or whether that be expose in reference to the things that are still like not publicly recognized, even though they really should be. For example, certain aspects of the LGBT community. So that's all I have to say. Like, I'm about to actually make these protein cookies, so peace. Too many people operating in 2D, two-dimensional like concepts when other people are in 3D concepts making changes and stuff, and 2D concepts thinking that all their influence just has to do with a straight line ahead of them, when they forgot that there's X, Y, Z, and A axes going on. People recognizing their power and how they contribute to the changes within their society just comes back down to general education. And ever since COVID happened, general education has been all over the place. Everything from standardization, from international down to local. It's that is what I spend a lot of my time doing. I spend a lot of my time putting points of education where they need to be in reference to where people are within society, the common themes and attitudes that people are experiencing on the ground and in the air, and just making sure that society doesn't fall to shit because too many people didn't have the right information at the right time.